Welcome to Rowdy Rants. I'm Rowdy. Thank you for coming. For those of you that are a returning viewer, thank you for coming back again. Today we're going to talk about state rights. There are two things that are most important in our current political climate. One of them I'm going to talk about right now, and that is state rights. Why? Because a lot of people don't even realize such a thing exists. So it's time to start educating the public. Okay? First off, pretty much everybody knows when you get to the U.S. Constitution that it was written for the entire country. What most people don't know or actually don't take time to think about is that every state has its own constitution. All of them. And of all those constitutions, they are representative of the people in that state. The governor is the head, the leader of that state, and that state has an assembly, or sometimes it's called a representative, and that state also has a senator, or more than one, depending on how many districts the state's divided in. You might notice that this is mirrored in federal government, where you have representatives and senators. That's because every state has to be able to do business the way that state's needs need to be met. Every state is a little bit different than the other. Some states are industrial, some states are agricultural. Coastal states are going to have different needs than breadbasket states. The Rust Belt has different needs. So everybody needs to have a government that is tuned to the needs of the people in that state. That's where state rights come in. When the U.S. Constitution was written, there were already constitutions in the 16 colonies. And much of the U.S. Constitution was actually based on those state constitutions. Why did each state already have a constitution? Because prior to independence, they had each colony with a royal writ or proprietary appointment. So they were subject to the crown through the royal writ with proprietary appointment. And once independence was claimed is when the states started putting forward their own constitutions, because they recognized that each region had its own needs. So they needed to have their own constitution. States have to be able to levy taxes. States have to be able to have laws specific for that area. And each state may choose to protect their citizens a little bit differently. For example, the state of Pennsylvania took their own Second Amendment a step further when they directed that the ability to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed for defense of oneself or the state. They clarified the vagueness of the U.S. Constitution. I want you to think about that. A lot of people will tell you that the most important amendments to our Constitution, be that the Bill of Rights or anything else, is the First and Second Amendments. The First Amendment and Second Amendments are important. They're very, very important. However, without the 10th Amendment, the federal government becomes a dictatorship. The 10th Amendment is anything not reserved for the federal government or specifically denied to the state is reserved for the state, respectively, or the people. What this is saying is that if there are not already writings in the Constitution, they can't create law out of whole cloth that sweeps the states without infringing on state rights. That's not to say that they haven't done it. They have. They did it with Roe v. Wade. That was a state rights issue right up until Roe v. Wade. Now, a lot of people will have you believe that Roe v. Wade legalized abortion. It did not. Roe v. Wade verified the privacy, right to privacy between a woman and her doctor. And from that grew the legal basis for abortion. I know you've been told something else your whole life, but go read Roe v. Wade, and what it establishes is privacy. And because of that privacy, abortion became legal. That's how this was done. Now back to where we started from, back into state rights. The federal government has no business infringing on state rights on a broad scale without a very, very good reason. You have constitutions in every state that are attuned to the needs of that state. Virginia has a very specific set of writings in its constitution where these are requirements to be carried out within government. Pennsylvania, as I said, has very specific reasons for what they have in there. And every state has their own. When you start seeing sweeping legislation, what this is doing is it is creating a challenge for state rights. Because there are going to be conflicts. The people have a right to be recognized by their state, and the state has a right to be recognized by the federal government. For the federal government to create sweeping legislation that impacts states negatively, it conflicts with these states' constitutions, creates problems. And that's where you start hearing people harping about state rights. If state rights were more observed, we would have a lot fewer problems than we're having right now. There are some things, of course, that we can't talk about that have to do with state rights as well. If state rights had been observed, we wouldn't be in the political challenging situations that we're in right now. And you can apply that from either direction. Both sides need to respect state rights. Not even both sides, all sides, because there's more than one side. You have a bureaucracy, you have lobbyists, you have conservative, you have liberal, you have Republican, you have Democrat. And they all need to start observing state rights. And the states need to start swinging out on their state rights and defining themselves. Ron DeSantis in Florida is a good example. If Gavin Newsom hadn't hung himself out to dry so much in California, he would be a good example on the Democrat side. But he went and got himself busted for going out and breaking his own rules and dragging things out there. So it's kind of hard. But I'm sure there are other examples that are available on the Democrat side. Now, you can say, well, we don't need state rights because the federal government is there to take care of everyone. No, they can't. Every state is a sovereign or a commonwealth. And the U.S. federal government does not have the right to erase a state's constitution. And that's where we're at right now, is in a lot of instances what we're seeing is propositions for law that challenge state constitutions or state laws. So we all need to be studying up and looking into the state rights, because these are the rights that actually confer greater liberties or greater requirements on how you are treated by law on the citizens. I have heard judges say that if attorneys would study state law, and in particular state rights, citizens' rights within a state, there are many instances where people will go to jail that would not go to jail had that attorney understood state law. Okay, that's it. That's all I've got to say. I don't want to drag it out too far. I'm just trying to get state rights into people's mind. When you're hearing the news about things that affect the states, you need to be bringing up to yourself state rights. And how does what's happening affect each individual state when each individual state has different needs, which means the citizens within that state have different needs. Who's better qualified to serve those needs? A federal government 1,000 miles away, or your own governor? That's it. Thank you for coming. That's my rant. Have a great day.